Right. Next is 6.7, consideration of state legislative update. And Matthew Rothstein will be starting this out.
Okay. Hello again, Supervisors. Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer. As your board is aware, Nielsen Merksimer has served as the County of Lake's state-level advocacy firm since January of 2024. Their trusted support in Sacramento with your board's legislative priorities has been highly valuable. Each of the bills on which your board took a formal position during the 2024 legislative session, for example, were meaningfully influenced by our firm's actions on behalf of Lake County. Jeff Neal is present in Zoom. You see him there to provide this morning's update and also respond to any questions from your board. Similar to the previous item, there's no action specifically requested of your board in connection to this item. However, you may consider providing direction to staff as appropriate. Now I'll turn the presentation over to Jeff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Pleasure to talk with you all again today. We've really been working with your staff in the county administrator's office to try and make sure we're keeping abreast of what's going on in the Capitol and making sure that we're focusing on the some of the bills that are of greatest interest to the board. Before I get into a couple of the bills, you do have a bill report in your packet. I'm planning to talk about a few of those, but also right now, coming tomorrow, we will have the governor's May budget revision. This will be an important moment for policy for the year. The governor released his January budget proposals a few months ago, and there was not a lot of substantive new proposals in that document. Last year, the state government passed what was essentially a 2-year budget. They didn't really call it that, but they balanced the budget for 2 years, made some cuts in the face of a deficit, and pushed a lot of costs into future years. So this year, revenues so far have actually been moderately strong. They have come in a few $1 billion above the estimates that were estimated in the adopted budget. However, some costs have also increased, particularly in Medi-Cal and in a few other areas as well. And then, of course, all the uncertainty, some of which you were just hearing about from Paragon in Washington, D.C., between a volatile stock market that is the source of a lot of the state's revenue and the uncertainty of funding for important programs from the federal government. We believe that the governor will be estimating a deficit of, in the current year and budget year, of a few $1 billion. And then we add to that the known projected deficits for the next 2 years that are probably in the order of $20 billion or so. This will be a difficult year for funding for the state government. Especially for a governor who is on the tail end of his term. The Senate President Pro Tem, obviously Senator McGuire, is toward the end of his term in the Senate. So we'll see how they're able to manage all the uncertainty, especially if the federal government doesn't pass a lot of their budget issues until later in the fall. If they don't pass them until September, that's usually when the state legislature is going home for the interim. So there's a lot of talk here in Sacramento about whether they will come back for a special session, if there are any necessary budget cuts that become apparent after the federal either budget or continuing resolution or whatever format that takes, if there are cuts to the programs that a lot of Californians rely on and that the legislature is very invested in, all the ones you were just hearing about. So that's what's happening tomorrow. We will, of course, take a look at the May revision when it comes out, summarize a few of the points that we know are of particular importance to Lake County and send those to your staff. But this is also an important time of year for the legislature. All bills, or essentially all bills at this point, have reached past the deadline where they had to pass out of policy committee. That was depending on what type of bill it was, either last week or the week before. There are a few types of bills that can still be taken up, tax levies, if there are any bills that call for an election. But essentially all the bills had to pass out of policy committee by last week. It means that most of them are now in the appropriations committee. We have a few hearings this week and next week in the appropriations committee, and then the appropriations committees will announce the results of their votes at the end of next week, either on Thursday or Friday, the 22nd or 23rd. From there, they'll all go to the floor, and then of course they'll go to the other house and go through the whole process again. I want to talk about a few of the bills that the county has a position on, as well as a few others that I think are of interest to the county. If there are other bills in the packet that you'd like me to address, or other bills that you've heard about, I'm happy to do it. But just starting at the beginning of the packet in the administration and operations section, there's AB 339. This is a bill that would require the county to give 120 days notice before they contract for most types of services. If any of those services are something that any represented employee has ever done. There's no exceptions for emergency situations or anything like that. And really, this is a redo of a bill from last year that the county also opposed. Makes it really difficult for counties to address fast arising situations. Takes away a lot of flexibility. 4-month notice is, of course, a long time before you can contract for important services. AB 993 by Assemblymember Hadwick. There's a bill that would, there's an RCRC sponsored bill. There's a bill that would extend the rural Coupa reimbursement program, apply to more counties and increase the cap per county. Of course, important funding for rural counties like Lake, responding to wildfires and hazardous material situations. Has a estimated cost of $1 to $1.5 million a year for the state, but obviously one that's perfect for Lake County to support, and we are doing so. Last one in the administration operations section that I want to address, there are a couple of CalPERS bills. The biggest one, I think, is AB 1383. Back in 2013, then Governor Brown was able to bring the legislature along with him in reforming pensions to bring down costs and reduce unfunded liabilities. And this bill would reverse a couple of the important provisions of that reform, PEPRA, by reducing the retirement age for public safety members, which by that part and a couple of related changes, CalPERS is estimating would cost statewide between $300 and $400 million per year in increased pension costs to pay for those estimated future costs. But the other thing that the legislation would do was for PEPRA members, it would make the normal cost, which is currently split half, the employer pays half and the employee pays half, it would make that bargainable. That was something that we saw before the pension reforms. One agency agrees to pick up part of the employee share, and then other agencies, in order to compete for employees, has to do that until eventually, essentially, all employers are paying all of the employer and the employee cost. And of course, after PEPRA, a lot of employers help make up for that difference by specifically increasing wages to make up for the difference that employees were no longer having, or were now having to pay half of that normal cost. So that's one that has the potential to have a fairly large fiscal effect on the county. A couple of Brown Act bills. SB 239 is the bill that's co-sponsored by CSAC, Cal Cities, a couple other statewide associations. There's a bill that would make it easier for advisory bodies at the local level to meet remotely without having to meet some of the particular requirements before doing so, like posting meeting all of the locations where people will be hearing, if people are in their homes posting the, joining a meeting from their home, posting the agenda outside their home, and importantly, being required to open their home to any member of the public who wants to attend from that location. This is part of the continuing conversation we've been having with the legislature on the Brown Act over the last few years. The other bill addressing the Brown Act is SB 707. SB 707 would put a number of new requirements on all Brown Act bodies, including some very detailed requirements, some translation requirements for agendas, and the requirement for every Brown Act body of every sort to allow remote public comment, regardless of technological feasibility. And if the method of doing that goes out, the meeting has to end. You can't take any action. There are a number of other requirements in there as well. And there are a lot of concerns about the cost of that. And, as we saw a few years ago when, of course, almost all meetings were being held online. Sometimes when there's a hot button issue, people call in from other states or at times even other countries, do things to specifically disrupt the meetings, be a lot harder to deal with some of those issues under the terms of the bill. But I want to get into some of the fire bills. There are a lot of bills related to wildfires, preparation, response this year. Obviously, the tragedies down in Los Angeles County, affected a number of legislative districts that wildfires don't often affect, in the Pasadena and Hollywood and nearby areas. And so a lot of LA members are carrying wildfire bills this year. But a number of them also carry over from, the situations that most other parts of the state have seen over the last few years. So a few that the county is supporting in this area include AB 1 by Assemblymember Connolly that would require the Department of Insurance to include home hardening in the Safer from Wildfire regulations and have efforts at home hardening be reflected in rates, make it easier to keep insurance and have more affordable insurance for people who are doing their part to protect their properties and those around them. Another one is AB 4401 by Assemblymember Hadwick, another one that the county is supporting. This is a bill that would extend a couple of state programs that help identify new ways for technology to address wildfires and provide state funding for home hardening. There's a fair amount of money going into that second program right now. It's had a little bit of a hard time getting off the ground. It's had a little bit of a slow start. So I think this bill is facing a little bit of wariness from some legislators who are, also worried about the budget, but really good programs that we definitely want to see extended, supporting that bill as well. One of the Los Angeles County members, a newly elected member who I think did not expect to be addressing wildfire issues when she ran for office, Senator Perez from the LA area, has SB 547. Is a bill that would take the current prohibition on canceling insurance policies within a year of a local fire emergency. Right now, that only applies to residential properties, and this would extend that prohibition on canceling insurance policies to commercial properties as well. And then also SB 616 by Senator Rubio, also about home hardening and extending that program to more communities, helping make sure more homes and communities are fire resistant. One bill that actually did not make it on the list that Matthew pointed out to me a couple of days ago, and I'm not sure how it got left off. We certainly intended to include it as AB 470. There's the bill on the carrier of last resort. The bill in this current form would give local telephone providers a lot of latitude in getting rid of their plain old telephone service. This is strongly opposed by many counties, RCRC, CSAC, because of the difficulty that it would cause. And if the providers do get rid of the plain old telephone service and responding to emergencies, notifying people in emergencies, and just making sure that there is some reliable method of communication for people in areas, especially rural areas where there aren't a lot of options. Some recent amendments to the bill help a little bit, perhaps, by inserting the CPUC into the process, but really the problems still remain. Maybe just one other bill I'll mention. I had a couple others marked, but I want to be mindful of time. Is SB 346. It would require short-term rental platforms to notify local agencies of properties under their jurisdiction that are listed on their platforms, so that the local agencies can collect any necessary or any imposed taxes, like transit occupancy taxes. Also make sure that those properties are following any regulations that the local agency has adopted related to short-term rentals. Is a bill that has had pretty good success so far. I think we're expecting some more vehement opposition from the short-term rental platforms, but so far the bill has been going through policy committee pretty cleanly, and that's an issue that a lot of jurisdictions have had increasing concerns about. So there's a number of other bills obviously listed in your packet, and thousands of other bills introduced in the legislature that you might have some interest in, and happy to talk about any of those or any other issues that are going on at the state level that we can shed some light on.
Matthew, any further comments before we talk to the board?
I don't have anything further to add, but do just want to thank Jeff for that substantive update, and we'll look forward to being in further touch over the course of the session.
We have
Yeah,
any board members?
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Supervisor Peiss.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Jeff, and for the reminder on AB 470 for caller. I did testify at a workshop recently on that. I think it would be important for us to get a letter out. And then also SB 460, our tax collector testified last week on that one. Maybe he can talk to us a little bit more about that later on. Can you talk about the conversations around Prop 4 and how that funding is going to be sorted out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are a couple of things to note on Prop 4 funding. One is this is something that a lot of us are really looking forward to seeing how the governor's administration proposes to handle this in the May revision that will be coming out tomorrow. In the January budget, a certain amount of state costs that the governor proposed, sort of backing out, not using the general fund for and using Prop 4 funds instead. Obviously, there are some people that don't like that idea because Prop 4 was passed to do new things, not just save the general fund some funding. It's not new, though. This happened with many of the bonds that have passed over time, one way or another. There's also a concern that because of those wildfires in Los Angeles County, that all or a very large piece of the funding related to wildfires will go just to the response in that region, when obviously there is the whole rest of the state that has been dealing with wildfires for a long time and has also has plans for some of those funds. I don't think in the end that all of the money, all the wildfire money will go to Los Angeles. I think while the LA delegation has a lot of clout, they don't have that much. And I think a lot of people understand, even down there, understand the fact that what happens in one part of the state affects the whole state. That said, there are a lot of other parts of Prop 4 as well. Wildfires is not even the largest part of it. Really, the largest part is around drinking water, flood control, issues like that. There are extreme heat dollars in there. I think that all of this funding will be parsed out over the course of years. Bonds are never sold all at once and all the money doled out in the first year or two. But I do think that we'll see a significant amount, between a quarter and maybe even a third of of each of the pots of funding, I think will be proposed for allocation. And there will be a big fight for those funds. The language of Prop 4 is fairly broad for each pot of funding. Not a lot of specifics. There aren't any or at least very many specific earmarks in it for specific projects or specific jurisdictions. I think these funding amounts will come out with a little more specificity, and then it'll be up to grant making bodies, whether it's DWR for some of the water related grants, CAL FIRE, OES for some of the fire related ones, for each local agency or maybe nonprofits to make their case.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, any other Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, I appreciate Jeff always being available when we're in Sacramento to help us through some of the more difficult to understand topics. I just wanted to talk real briefly about some of the highlights that are on this document. Some of them we have made official announcements as a Board of Supervisors on supporting or not supporting, but I'm not sure I see some that are highlighted that we've made specific actions or taken specific actions on, such as AB 339. I don't remember that one coming up. Do you need, because I'm in support of that, but do you need us to maybe take action today and at least consensus or motion to approve that the county does oppose that position? Because I'm slightly uncomfortable with saying the county opposes if we haven't actually made a decision on that.
Your board would be very welcome to provide direction today, whatever that direction looks like. The county administrative office did sign onto a coalition letter on that topic because it was so well tied into our priorities.
Okay. Well, I'd like to just make it official from the board as well. I think that would be helpful. The one about the Brown Act, the continuing into 2030, I think is really important. I think we've all been utilizing that, and I think it would really impact us if suddenly that did go away and not be extended till 2030 to continue the teleconferencing rules as were provided to us sometime midway through the COVID pandemic. And then I did want to highlight one that is one that I'm very interested in that has come up on my radar is from Aguirre Curry. It's a farm to fork bill, AB 675, to codify the farm to fork and make it an official state program. And I think that has some good potential for economic development for our agricultural sector here in Lake County, and just something also that I'm working on with the Food Policy Council. So something that got me a little excited to see that she was working on. That's all I got. Thank you for the update.
And I think last year, I think I testified for 707 with the Assemblywoman Durazo. I know it was continued, so this year it's moving forward, but there was that, and I don't see the other one that I testified for, but it had to do with nonprofits. They were looking to lessen the involvement with nonprofits, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe Jeff?
I think I didn't get into that aspect of it, but that's part of the conversation around AB 339, because a lot of the contracting that counties, and there was a bill
That's it.
last year as well that I think you did come down for, Supervisor, but because it would make it so much more difficult, in some cases prohibitively difficult for the county to contract for services, even ones it has been contracting for years. One of the most impacted if you will, private sector areas are nonprofits, because nonprofits work with counties on so many services that the nonprofits coalition, the California Association of Nonprofits, is opposed to AB 339 and our significant voice trying to stop that bill.
Right. Yep. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else from anybody? We'll open it up to the public for any questions. Anyone on Zoom? All right, Patrick, please unmute and
Hi, I did want to raise some awareness about SB 346, which I know has been discussed here, and that's the transient occupancy tax bill. Airbnb and some of the other online platforms have definitely increased their activity in opposition to this bill. I did provide testimony on it in Sacramento. Lake County is heavily impacted. I know there will be an item later where we talk about a lot of the new vacation rentals we're finding during our operations and the impact it'll have on the county. So if the board wanted to consider adopting a position to support this bill, that would require Airbnb to, and other platforms like it, to disclose their address and identify their listings. I think that would be a huge value to the county. If your board's interested in going that direction, there is a template letter out there that's been used by a lot of cities and counties, and I'm happy to provide that or participate.
Yeah, I think we should.
yep. Thank you, Patrick. I think we have a consensus. So do we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. With that, did you have one more thing?
Just a request on how to follow up on the moving forward with what is being proposed as county supported, county opposed that we have not gone through here. Do we ask for that to come back to make it official, or can we just give consensus to say support, oppose AB 339 and support AB 993? I think those are the two that I see that we have not taken an official position on through the Board of Supervisors at this moment in time.
Just one point of clarification, AB 993, that your board did adopt a letter on.
Okay. I apologize.
So that leaves us with the other bill?
Yeah.
AB 339.
AB 339. So your board can, one of two options, provide direction to staff via consensus to come back either with a letter of support for your board's consideration, which, proposal there would be for the board via the chair to sign. Otherwise, aside from that option, your board can also provide via consensus direction to staff in some other manner of supporting the particular bill. I'm not too clear on what form that will come in the form of outside of just a letter of support, which would need to come back to your board for signature.
Supervisor?
Yeah, also AB 470. I think if we give this direction, they can come back and be on consent.
Okay. I think we have consensus. Or yeah. We do. All right, Matthew. Thank you very much. Jeff, thank you as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.